Or maybe you're saying, oh, I'm eat up with sin and nobody knows it but me. And if they knew, what would they say? What would they do? And there's some people in this room today, if somebody got in your closet, they wouldn't find a skeleton. They might find a graveyard up in that thing. But I can tell you this, God can come in there and He can clean that mess up. And God can take your mess and turn it into a message. God can take the very thing that the enemy meant for bad and turn it around for your good. And that's what He wants to do today. He wants to say, hey, I want to get all up in your mess. God wants to open up your closet door and get all up in the skeletons. He's not embarrassed by it. And it's nothing that He can't fix. Am I right? So many people believe that they're beyond God's redemption. They're beyond God's forgiveness. That, hey, God can't use me. I'm too messed up. I've done way too many bad things. God can't use me. I'm here to tell you this. He can use you. And matter of fact, He wants to use you. God wants to use you in the middle of your mistake and your mess and your test, everything that you're walking through, that God wants to say, I want to use you. Amen? You believe that?
Yes.
And that's what He says here. He says, I'm looking for this man's heart. See, in this process, let me give you a little background information. What they're doing at this point is they're choosing a new king. And Samuel says, hey, because many people, when they're looking for a king, they're looking for somebody who's sharply dressed, somebody who's intelligent, somebody who maybe has a little bit of money. But he says, hey, I'm not even looking at the outward appearance. I'm looking at this man's heart. So go and find it. Let's look at our next point. The world is waiting. I said the world is waiting. I just told you that there's 4% of our generation who calls themselves Christians and says that they're saved. Many people say that they're Christians, but they don't really understand the meaning of the word. They don't live life. There's a disconnect between what their mouth says and what their lifestyle looks like. But this is what happens right here in this verse 11. It says, so he asked Jesse. Let me back up for one verse. Jesse had 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to him, the Lord has not chosen these. So he asked Jesse, are these all the sons that you have? And then I love this verse. It says, there is still the youngest. Jesse answered, but he is tending the sheep. And Samuel said, send for him, and we will not sit down until he arrives. Can I tell you that the world is standing, waiting for you to arrive?
Amen.
Because there's something locked up inside of you. See, there's a message inside of you. For those of you who've been redeemed, those of you who God's worked in your life, there's a message inside of you that's waiting to be released. And people are waiting for the gospel. It's the only thing that changes lives. Let me tell you something. These lights, these screens, all this stuff, it will not change your life.
Amen.
And you can get caught up in it if you want to, but it will leave you empty. It's a man. His name's Jesus Christ. He's the only one. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And He's going to change your life. Amen?
Amen.
Don't get caught up in the mess. Don't get caught up in the stuff. Because you'll miss Jesus all the way. He's the only one. The gospel is what changes lives. And that's locked up inside of you. And God wants it to be released. It's a message of hope. It's a message of redemption and restoration and joy and peace. That's the gospel. The gospel is, I can take you from where you are to where you want to be. We can cross that bridge together. And many of you, you're like, well, Kyle, I'm not where I want to be. But thank God you're not where you used to be. You're on that bridge and you're walking and you're getting there. And He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. In other words, as long as you're walking the road, He's right there with you. You're not alone. And the world's waiting for a generation to rise up. To rise up and say, I'll do whatever He calls me to do. Whatever He calls you to do. Many of you, if He called you to go to Africa, it would scare you to death. How many of you it would scare you to death? Come on, let's be real with each other. I would be. I'd be like, what? Africa? You meant Atlanta. That's what you meant when you said that, didn't you? And I'd be scared to death. But there are many people in here that God's calling you to go somewhere. He's calling you to do something. He's calling you to move out of where you are into something new. And you're scared. But the world's waiting. people are waiting. There's something there for you. There's a bigger purpose, and you can now see. Because God's got your best interest at heart. And that leap of faith may be the hardest leap that you ever have to make. But on the other side of that is your reward. On the other side of your obedience is your reward. And it's a lot harder to obey, isn't it? That when God speaks, we want to question it for months and months. Well, I'm just going to pray and fast for 40 days. Well, maybe He don't want you to pray and fast for 40 days. Maybe in that very moment, God's asking you to move. And He wants you to obey in that moment. Well, Kyle, it's hard. I understand it's hard. I believe it was hard when Jesus was in the Garden of Gethsemane and He said, God, take this cup from me. Let this pass from me. I don't want to do this. In other words, He was scared. He was nervous. He didn't want it. How many of you would have wanted to go up on the cross? If I see your hand, we are praying for you. It was a difficult task. It was a difficult mission, but on the other side of it was His reward. He got to go and sit at the right hand of the Father, now interceding for us. The world is waiting. Romans 8:19 says that the whole creation waits for the sons of God to arise. It's waiting for the sons of God. In other words, you are a son and a daughter of the Most High God. Do you know that? And that when people look at you, they see a representation of the Father. Why? Because you're made in His image. And I don't know about you, but when I wake up in the morning, that makes me happy. That gives me a little joy in knowing that, hey, I'm made in His image. I'm a representation of the Most High God. And that's who God's called you to be. That's who God's gifted you to be. That's who God has purposed for you to be in this earth. That you would be the son and the daughter of God. And that when you go, they don't see you, but they see Him on you and in you. In your lifestyle. The world's waiting for that. Our next point, God has chosen you. Circle chosen in your outline. God has chosen you for greatness. You are a holy priesthood, a chosen generation. God's chosen you. And looking at the verse in your outline, 12 and 13 says this. So they go and they find this person. So He sent and had him brought in. He was ruddy, with a fine appearance and handsome features. And then the Lord said, Rise and anoint him. He is the one. So Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the presence of his brothers. And from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David in power. And Samuel then went to Ramah. In other words, they find David. Now, if you know the story, David's what? A shepherd boy, tending the sheep. They had to go out and find him because it wasn't normal for him to be inside the house. He was out with the sheep. He slept with the sheep. He fed the sheep. He took care of the sheep. That was his job, but also it was his lifestyle. And I'm thinking if I was David, I had probably made up my mind at this point that I was just going to be a shepherd boy for the rest of my life. But then something happens. There's this change that happens. And then someone comes and gets David and says, come on now. And I'm imagining that Jesse's thinking, his dad's thinking, man, you're not going to choose David. That's why we keep him out in the field anyway. He's not the one. But Samuel all along is knowing that, hey, he's the one. When he gets here, we're not sitting down until he gets here. They're waiting in expectation. Listen, can I just say something back on that other point? They're waiting in expectation. How many of you come in here every week expecting God to do something? Me. And not just on Sunday, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that you are expecting God to move in your life. Can I just say this? You have not because you ask not. He wants to move. He wants to do something big in your life, but He's looking for you to want it. Do you have that desire? Do you have that passion to say, God, move in my life? I'm expecting you to move in this situation because if you don't, I don't know what I'm going to do. And they wait on this boy. He's handsome and he's kind of ruddy looking, but fine appearance. So God just said, hey, you're not looking on the outward appearance, but it's funny because He describes His outward appearance right here. It's a little ironic, but here's what happens. He takes the oil and He anoints him, and it says from that day forward, the Spirit of God rested on David. The Spirit of God rested on David. Not the spirit of anyone else, not this thing that they just implanted in him. No, they anointed him, they laid hands on him, and said, He's the one. And God, I believe, wants to anoint you and put His hands on you and say, you're the one. Because why? Because He's chosen you for greatness. Great things. Ephesians 3:20 says this, that He can do more than you can imagine. Exceedingly, abundantly, above all that you could think or imagine. And when you begin to expect great things begin to happen. Am I right? When you begin to act on your faith, when you begin to step out and do something new, fresh, without even knowing where you're going, God's anointed you, He's put His hand on you, He's gifted you for a specific purpose, and that very moment, His Spirit rests inside of you. Because He's chosen you for greatness. Listen, greatness in your life, greatness in your family, in your marriage, greatness in your workplace, greatness everywhere that you walk. You know, the Bible talks about that everywhere, sometimes when they're going into a new territory, it would say that everywhere they put their hand and foot, that it prospered. And my prayer is this, that you would prosper even as your soul prospers. That great things will come to pass in your life. Why? Because you've been chosen for it. God's destined you for that. He's chosen you. Some of you business owners, listen, right now maybe you're asking yourself, I don't know, in this financial economy, if my business is going to make it. Listen, my prayer is this, that you would know that He's chosen you for greatness. That He's chosen you. That His hand's on your life. That He'll sustain you. That He'll provide for you. And even if your business does fail, He'll prove Himself to be Jehovah Jireh, your provider. And if that business fails, guess what? He'll give you a drink for a no. And He'll give you everything you need, because He will not call you where He will not empower you. Amen. He's chosen you for greatness. See, David went from being a shepherd boy to a king in a matter of a few minutes. That's a pretty crazy transformation, am I right? You can go from being this shepherd boy to being a king. God wants to take you from where you are to where He wants you to go. God's got this bigger purpose inside of your life. And many of you are asking, God, what's your will for my life? What is your purpose? I don't know what your purpose is for my life, what your will is. I will tell you this, I can know that it is something great. I know that it's bigger than yourself. How many of you want to do something that's bigger than you? You want to be a part of something that's bigger than you. And when it's bigger than you, you can't do it on your own. Am I right? You got to have some help. And you got to have God leading you and empowering you and saying, hey, here's the resources, now go and get it done. This is my will. Walk in it. There's one thing that I pray quite a lot, and it's this: God, be the voice that's in my ear telling me this is the way. Walk in it. I pray that a lot because I want His direction in my life. I want His will in my life. Now listen, sometimes that can be a scary thing. So when you begin to pray that prayer, be ready for what He's going to say, because you may be asking God what His will is for your life. Just know it may not be what you want to hear. Amen. Just know that He very well may call you to do something that you don't feel adequate to do. You don't feel ready to do. Maybe you're at a stage in your life where you don't want to know God's will and you're not even praying that prayer. And that's okay. And I want to even go here. Maybe you feel like you've messed up God's will. Anybody ever been there? You feel like you messed it up? One? Okay, a few. There we go. Okay. Where you felt like you thought you heard the voice of God, but maybe you didn't. And isn't it funny that when we think we hear the voice of God that we've got to tell everybody? Quit telling everybody. Because you look like an idiot when it don't come to pass. You better know that you know that you know that you know that you heard His voice. And then tell somebody. And don't just tell anybody. Listen, you can't tell your dream to anybody, because there's some dream killers. There's some dream takers. And some of them work with you. And some of them live in your house. Some of them are your kids. They want to steal your dream. That's totally a joke. But there are some people around you who they want to steal the dream that God's got for you, the purpose, the vision. And I talked about it last week. You better throw Jonah on off the boat, baby.